Well, hello everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with Brian Reich, Director of Technology here at Core Business Solutions. Glad you could join us again, Brian.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Great to have you with us. Now, on this week's podcast, we're going to be digging into cybersecurity for small businesses, specifically the bare minimum practical stuff that businesses with only a handful of employees might actually need or worry about. But before we get into it, let's hear a little bit more about Brian's journey. And I do have a question for him. What is your current favorite OS operating system?
My favorite OS right now is Ubuntu Linux.
Okay. Any specific reason why?
Yeah, so over the last couple of years, now I had always been a Windows guy, mostly because everywhere I worked, that was kind of, that was the default, and that was fine. As a primarily a software developer, I started realizing I was missing out on a lot by not embracing the command line, and I started getting more familiar with that. And as I started using Linux more, I realized that the desktop experience really has caught up with Windows and Mac OS to the point where I prefer it over Windows at this point. And the fact that it felt like Microsoft was playing some games with licensing and force feeding Windows 11 with advertisements and stuff like that, that's all the push I needed to get my personal computers over to Linux.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to hear. Let's hear a little bit more about Brian's journey as far as what you do, where you came from.
Yeah, so before I came to Core Business Solutions, I was self-employed as a freelance web developer, and I did a lot of custom software development as well. I worked mostly with small businesses, but I built some cool stuff for some bigger companies too. Then I came to CBS in 2019 and became part of the software development team here. Since then, I've moved around between individual contributor, i.e. software development roles, and management as well. So today I'm the director of technology, and I still manage the software team. I still write a ton of code, but I also handle parts of our IT infrastructure, and I manage the technical side of our ISO 27001 implementation as well.
Well, that's awesome. And I think the last part, 27001 dealing with, cybersecurity, that's what we're going to drill in today. Real security for real small businesses. Well, let's dive in. So when a business owner with 5 employees or so hears the word cybersecurity, they picture a whole world of very complicated stuff. They're like, great, I got to do this. I know I need to, but hey, it looks all complicated. If they walked up to you and said, Brian, because that's your name, where do I start? What would you tell them?
Well, first, I would frame it this way. Today, we're going to talk about high-level, bare minimum, practical cybersecurity guidance for a small business. I want to focus on reducing the risks and ensuring your business has dealt with the absolute basics. This conversation isn't going to be about achieving certification or protecting your business to the nth degree by throwing money at problems you're probably not going to have, right?
Right.
And let's be honest. So even if we did talk about something more comprehensive, like achieving ISO 27001 compliance or something like that, most small businesses aren't likely to want to do all of that until a contract requires that level of effort. So today we're going to keep it real and keep it real simple.
Yeah, it's a starting place where you need to be, that bare minimum, if you want to protect your stuff. But that's really important. I mean, people don't realize. They don't care what your data is. They just know that you care what your data is and where it is, and it's accessible. So
yeah.
What do you want to start with?
Well, so let's start by thinking about the things that an attacker actually wants out of your business.
Okay.
And for most small businesses, that's your money. It's not your trade secrets. It's not your customer database. It's literally just your money. As of today, there's 2 primary ways that they're going to try and get at that. They will either try to trick you or somebody in your organization into just handing it over, or they'll lock you out of your own stuff and then charge you a ransom to get it back.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So, that makes sense. Give us some guidelines and might talk about how they do that.
Right. So let's talk about how to help your small business avoid those 2 specific risks.
Okay.
And avoid the fallout of having those systems compromised in those kinds of ways. You're not going to need an expensive security operations center. You don't need 6-figure tools to deal with it. You need to deal with some pretty simple things.
So rather than boiling the ocean, which a lot of people like to say in Core Business Solutions, you should just focus on what's likely to come at you.
Yeah, that's the right place to start. And you can mature your cybersecurity posture with the needs of your business and as the threats in the cybersecurity world change too.
Hmm.
Honestly, if a small business doesn't have the expertise in house to work through the very basics that we're going to talk about here, I'd always recommend you find a decent MSP or a managed service provider. Spending some money on letting experts help secure your business while you deal with running your business is money well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to just say, "Hey, my nephew knows how to. He's into computers." Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
great. He might not know all of the ins and outs. Maybe he does, but maybe he doesn't. So,
I was that nephew at one point, and I'd say, leave it to the experts.
yeah, there you go. Good call. Good call. So let's take that first risk that you mentioned: attackers tricking someone into handing over money. Where does that happen? How does it happen?
It usually happens in email, almost always, but it also happens via texts and phone calls and social media as well. We usually call this kind of scam phishing with a PH. It's just what we call scams launched via email, text, or phone, in which the cyber criminals are trying to get you to do something stupid, like give them your money or username and password credentials or some other kind of sensitive information, right?
Okay.
And this is kind of the thing that I'd like all small business owners to internalize. You need to treat your email like a financial instrument because
that's a neat way to look at it.
yeah. I mean, functionally, that's what it's become. If somebody can spoof your email address or even worse, actually log into your email account and become you, they can do all kinds of stuff. They can impersonate you to your customers or your bookkeeper or your bank.
Hmm.
They can reset your passwords to other systems like your bank account.
That's not good.
No, it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
Email is basically it's basically become the control panel for a huge chunk of your business. And most people aren't thinking about that and not securing it with that in mind.
And even if something's like, let's say, multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, which we're going to talk about later, a lot of people look at that as a problem. Like sometimes now, email wants to check and verify you, and you're like, "Why do I want to do this? I just want to get in and check my email." Maybe those aren't good things to turn off or disable at some point. But we'll get into the MFA. Yeah. But I'm saying I can see how even with some places trying to secure your email more, sometimes there's a resistance to that too. So it's really less about hackers, sitting in their basement with their hoodies on, breaking through firewalls, and more about them walking through the front door dressed as you.
Yeah, that's basically it. The threats most small businesses are going to face, they're not the same as the threats that nation states and large companies or defense contractors are going to face.
Right.
Those kind of organizations, the reward for getting into them might be worth years of research by teams of very talented people. So I'm saying first deal with the threats you're actually likely to encounter.
Right. In your business. Gotcha. Any examples?
Yeah, so here's a good example. There's a company called Schooler that's a 120-year-old commodities trading firm out of Omaha, Nebraska. Back in 2015, they lost $17.2 million, and it was a very unsophisticated attack. Basically, the attacker sent emails to the corporate controller that looked like they were coming from the CEO. It requested that they transfer a bunch of money to accounts in China. And the controller wired the money without double checking.
Right.
And they lost that amount of money in 3 separate payments over just a couple of weeks. And there was no hacking. There wasn't any malware. There was no break-in. It was just convincing emails and one missing phone call.
Yeah. And they are pretty brilliant the way they do this. It's not the I'm a Nigerian prince that, wants to give you $5 million anymore. They know how to get in and get you to the point of really thinking it's somebody in the business.
Yeah, they have gotten a little bit more sophisticated these days.
Yeah, and man, 17 million. That wasn't some obscure company getting blindsided. This was a big, well-run business, and they fell for it.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the unsettling part, right? If it can happen to them, it can probably happen to a 5-person shop. And that small business has a lot less room to absorb that kind of loss.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yeah.
So the FBI publishes an annual internet crime report, and this category of scam, they call it a business email compromise.
Okay.
It accounted for something like 2.9 billion in reported losses in 2023.
Wow.
And that's just what got reported.
Yeah, not everybody is saying, "Hey, let me tell you how much money I lost this way." That makes a good point. I mean, that's probably much larger. Wow. So what does a small business do about it? How could that situation have been avoided for the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the simplest and cheapest advice I can give is use your phone like a phone. Call and verify. Right?
Yeah. I can understand that.
Yep. So I would say your organization should have some sort of official phone call rule in place. So if anybody at your business gets an email from anybody, vendor, employee, the boss, the CEO, asking you to do something that's related to money or security, you pick up the phone and call them at the number you already have from them, like from the corporate directory, not what's in the email, because that could be spoofed too.
Don't follow a link.
Correct. Yep. Do not click the links.
Right.
So you verify with your actual voice that the actual person is making the actual request, right?
Mm-hmm.
That rule alone would have stopped this schooler loss. It would have stopped a huge percentage of that BEC loss reported by the FBI. And this advice is free. It takes just a couple of seconds, and most businesses probably don't do it.
Why not? Why don't people do that?
I don't know, but if I were going to hazard an uninformed guess, I guess it feels awkward to question your boss.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, not for me. I do that like 6 times on a Tuesday, but for less annoying people, that logic makes sense.
Well, yeah, and if obviously it's usually the email has some sense of importance and urgency, so that's puts
how
you.
They get you.
Yep, that's so it's like, oh man, I got to take care of this. I know that we had an employee start, and within the first week, they got a text, so-called from our boss, the president of the company, saying, "Hey, can you send me some gift cards for yada yada yada?" And it was like, "Sure, okay, no problem." And I was like, "Whoa!" They talked to me about. I said, "Hey, I think that's a scam." And this is before they got through. This is a couple days after they started.
Yeah.
They found out where they started from their LinkedIn email, or their LinkedIn saying, "Oh, start a new business here," and they had their phone number in there, obviously, because that's in your contact information. Texted them, said, "Hey, now that's not keys to the kingdom, but it still is money that somebody could be out." So they're keeping a strong eye on what people are doing any way they can catch money.
Yep. The key to this, to not make it awkward, is to make it official, written down, communicated to everybody. Just make it clear that this is how your organization does things. If you do that, then nobody's being rude, nobody's being awkward. It's just the way the company runs. And honestly, I think any legit boss or client is going to be glad you did something like this.
So this schooler was an example of what we call a successful phishing scam. Are there other email-related risks we could talk about?
Yeah, it's so many. So with phishing, the risk is in somebody convincing you via email to do something kind of stupid, often by impersonating somebody that you trust or has authority over you to convince you to do something that otherwise maybe you wouldn't do.
Right.
What someone can do via social engineering is terrifying, but that's really only one side of the coin.
Okay. Well, what if they actually get access to your email account? Like not just sending you an email saying something to do it, but say impersonating you.
Yeah. So that's a fresh level of hell you probably don't want to experience as a business owner.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. For some folks, their level of understanding of what email is hasn't really caught up with the times that we live in, right? For a lot of us, our email account ends up being the keys to our entire kingdom.
Right.
So if you're still thinking about it like, oh God, a hacker has access to my memes that I sent Craig, you're not thinking about it clearly anymore.
No, you're not. And I mean, how many of us know people, if you're active on social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever, that their accounts gotten hacked?
Yeah.
And it's so hard to get it back.
Yeah.
How do you prove you're you and not they're you? Oh my gosh. Now you're talking about email that, again, like you said, so much of our business and personal life and monetary aspects of our lives are connected to that email.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, I mean, with that in mind, it kind of gets a lot worse if they actually get control of your email account. Your email account might also be the account that you use for your entire corporate information system, like Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace.
Yeah.
It can be the place where your password resets usually go. So if somebody gets access to your email account, there's all kinds of mischief that they can get into. They'll use that access to escalate their attacks into other systems. For example, if you're the owner of the business and you are the admin for your Microsoft 365, they can go in there and change all kinds of stuff.
Well, yeah, and they probably have
pretty much anything.
Probably that's what your accounting software is attached to.
Yep.
Wow. Well, consider me very terrified on that respect.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm thinking about it right now. Maybe I need to pay attention to some of my personal stuff here too. But what do you suggest?
Yeah, first, practice good password hygiene. And this just isn't just for you, but this is for your whole organization. Develop a password policy and enforce it via whatever mechanisms you have at your disposal. Your password should be long.
Mm-hmm.
It should be difficult to guess or hack by brute force and not something that can be determined by public information easily found on social media.
So not something like my wife's name is my sweetheart.
Yeah. Like if you're using like your kid's name plus, their
birthday.
year of birth or something,
Yeah.
you're not doing it right.
Right.
Now none of this means your password has to be hard to remember. I'm a fan of recommending people use passphrases these days.
Yeah.
So my password is like, well, I shouldn't say how long it is, but it's very long, but it is the easiest thing in the world for me to remember. So that's something I recommend.
I know mine. I mean, passphrases changed my life.
Yeah. So on that note, we have about an hour of content in this podcast devoted to advice on passwords.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd encourage everybody to go back and listen to that if they want some more details on how to set their own password policy, right?
Yep.
Having said that, the reality is that today a good password policy is not enough. So if somebody's going to steal your password, it's often going to be via phishing. And when they trick you into just typing your password into their form and sending it to them, complexity is not going to help because they're going to get it in plain text and they're going to know it, right?
Okay.
You need more than that.
You mean like moving off grid, becoming a hermit, and your only company being a llama named Fred?
Well, you know me. That is definitely my MO.
Yeah, I know.
Right,
and you like llamas.
Yeah, I do. I do like llamas, alpacas, but they're pack animals. So if you get one, you got to get two.
Okay.
So
what's a better option then than becoming a hermit?
Well, if you don't want to do that, which I still recommend.
Yeah,
there are other options. And one is to implement multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
Mm-hmm.
So MFA is a security feature that many, many, many products have now that require you to give more than just a password to log in.
Right.
Multi-factor means you have multiple ways of authenticating yourself. And the first is something that's your password. And the other is typically something you have. That's usually your phone with an authenticator app on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that authenticator app is going to generate a temporary passcode. The idea with this is that even if an attacker steals or guesses your password, they still can't get into that account without physical access to that device. Right. So here's the interesting thing. Microsoft's own security team has published that enabling MFA blocks over 99.9% of automated account takeovers.
Wow.
That's not just marketing shenanigans there. That's from their telemetry across billions of logins into their software.
Wow.
Right?
So that's pretty cool.
Yep. So, I mean, if there's absolutely nothing else you take away from this podcast, I would strongly recommend you turn on MFA for your email, bank accounts, or any other accounts that you can possibly turn it on for.
Okay. Well, 99.9%, that is a huge return on investment for something that it's basically free and available to you.
Yeah, I agree. MFA generally costs about $0 to implement. It can take you about 10 minutes to enable across your whole organization if you're on 365 or Google Workspace. Is it annoying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It is. I don't like it, but it does work. And that annoyance is the whole cost of admission, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets you one of the simplest high-impact security improvements available to a small business.
I'm going to be honest. I've rolled my eyes at MFA prompts before, and cursed at them and like, why do I have to do this all the time? I leave my phone on my other office, if I'm here in the studio, whatever. But listening to more about this, I think I might need to enable them on a few more things.
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah. It's annoying, but man, sometimes you want to keep that safety going on. Well, that's the end of part 1 of Cybersecurity for Beginners. Please tune in next week, where we'll continue our conversation with Brian and discuss ransomware, the importance of backups, contingency planning, and more. And we want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope it's been informative for you. And if you're looking for more information about core business solutions, how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, or even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, be sure to do so. That way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's dropped next week. Have a great day, everyone.